Real estate teams do not die overnight. They tend to slowly suffocate. Maybe you've heard a story of a team getting up and walking out and a team leader's left wondering what in the heck just happened. Well, that's not going to be you. And thank God by now, so far it hasn't been me. And we're going to talk about how those things happen. This is Commission, the podcast where we take you from the complete overwhelmed chaos and grind that is for most people the real estate business and a real estate team. And we take you to the freedom and the wealth and the income and the impact of having a truly great residential real estate business. I'm Todd Tramonte. I am the host of Commission, and I've been selling real estate and helping people buy real estate and build teams and a brokerage in the DFW area for well over 20 years. And alongside my buddy Grady Dill, who's here with us right now.
Yo.
We run real estate growth systems, and we coach agents all over North America who are hoping to do the same, which is to build a residential real estate business or team around their unique gifts and abilities and have big income and big impact. So let's get out of the chaos and into the income and the impact. This is Commissioned. Now, for the topic of today's episode, burnout is really not even the right word in my opinion, but it's the word that most people use most often, right? So you have been around, most likely, if you've been in real estate very long, and if you're listening to this or watching us, then you probably have. You've been around a story or an example of a leader of either what we would call a solo with help business, which means like a top producing agent that maybe has an assistant or a showing help or a couple people that support them, but it's not a formal team. You've been around someone in that situation that's been overwhelmed, or you are that person, or you've certainly been around the person or the story of the team leader who's got a team in principle. They have a team on paper, yet they're still grinding. They're still feeling constantly the stress of what's next, what could take us out, what's working, what's not working. Or you've been around the broker whose intention is to deliver a ton of value and keep people for a long time, but they're kind of always running scared that people are going to leave and that they don't have a true real business. So what I would say is what a lot of people are calling burnout, I'm saying is just this slow suffocating of the business. And that's due to a lack of a lot of things, and we'll get into some of those things. And it's also due to some misunderstandings, and we'll get into some of those. And then I know Grady's looks to be eager with some questions over there to represent you, our viewer and our listener, who's wanting some answers on how to make sure that this is not you. So we're going to get into it. You already look eager, so go ahead.
I'm ready to ride.
Fire one ready.
Okay, so when you talk about high-producing agents, team leaders, all the listeners out there, what does suffocation actually look like? I feel like that's a good place to start.
So again, to use the kind of the comparison of burnout or suffocation, you know, I think the story that I told at the beginning, the whole like, oh my gosh, my team just revolted and took off. That's kind of that acute blow up. Like, man, it just happened overnight. So that does happen. Like, I know people that's happened to. Sadly, I know individuals that has happened to more than once. And ultimately it is not entirely, but it is in a lot of ways a failure of leadership. Okay. That doesn't mean bad things can't happen to all of us, but that tends to be a sign of bad leadership. You either let a cancer just stay on your team or you neglected the whole darn group and they all decided to get the heck out. Okay, but what we're talking about is a slow suffocation. That happens when you can see the business weakening. You can feel the business weakening. You are experiencing signs of weakness, right? Of suffocation. You might say like there's less oxygen in the air, right? It is harder to breathe. You sometimes don't want to be there. You oftentimes are just not excited about the work. You're kind of sick of doing it with who you're doing it with or the way you've been doing it, or sick of carrying the load, but you're not really doing much about it. Okay, so this is the path to suffocation. To me, in my experience as a coach, thankfully we don't see this on our team, certainly not in any significant way, but in coaching, I see this a lot. And so suffocation looks like you know how you got there. You may not know exactly how you got there, but you know a lot of the signs. You saw the lessening of oxygen. You saw the leaks in the system. You saw the breaks in the process. Some specific examples may be like you lost a team member and you didn't replace him. A system broke and you didn't replace it. A lead source went away and nothing changed, right? So it's like those things that fueled the organization, the sources of fresh air were going away and we didn't replace them. We didn't heal that. We didn't fix that. We didn't change anything. So it's just been the slow degradation of quality and clean air and breathing, to continue the metaphor.
But there's parts of it in times that it is noticed by the people involved, but how many times is it not noticed and it takes somebody else to be like, hey, there's something going on?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I did say you know how you got there.
Yeah.
You didn't know everything. You didn't see every incremental loss of progress and error and all those things, right? But you said something that triggered another thought. It's like sometimes the other people in the organization saw it, but it wasn't healthy enough to have the conversation, right? Like a great book out there, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Like one of my big takeaways every time I read it is like, we have to be able to have open conflict. We have to be able to openly talk about the problems instead of being the type of environment, a dysfunctional environment, where you don't talk about those things. And so people see it coming, and ultimately they're like, no, this didn't blow up. This was a slow burn. We just suffocated, and it's not a team anymore. It's not a great business anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. You don't want to be here. The owner doesn't want to be there anymore. One version of this is the owner, and we could do a whole nother podcast on this. We probably should. I say that like every time. Is the owner that is really profitable as an individual agent. And then they're still really profitable with a little bit of help. And then they just watch their profits get suffocated as they build the team, meaning like it's less and less profitable, and there's more and more complexity and more work and more grind and a little bit less real estate and more business, if you know what I mean. And then they kind of, I say, look up one day. And again, they kind of know how they got there. But the question for them is like, why would I keep a team? I'm going to go back to being an individual agent, or an individual agent with some help. And that's not what most people should do, but that sense of suffocation, like, man, it's just not fun anymore. It's like, I can't breathe anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. It's really sad. And I mean that. It's really sad because it could have been, and you obviously wanted to build for a reason, and there was some opportunity there, but it was either built poorly, or it wasn't maintained well, or life happened to you and you just couldn't recover. And so it then slowly degraded and suffocated and became something you no longer wanted, or something that no longer served you or the people in the organization. That's not the same as the blow up or the burnout of just like, man, I've been working hard and it was fun. Now it's not. It was profitable. And we were making money. Now we're not, or like, I'm still making money. I just hate it. That's different. And again, we could do a whole nother episode on that. But this idea, this overwhelm that comes from like showing up every day, and it's a little bit worse, and it's a little bit worse, and it's a little bit worse, that often turns to an action that just kills a good business, or kills what could have been a good business, or what was once a great business. It feels a lot like wasted hard work. So let me give you some signs that this might be happening to you. Lots of wasted hard work and energy. Right? Where you're like, I used to work and it produced business, and business produced relationships and produced money. Now I do a lot of work and I don't sometimes know what it's producing. I know it feels like I need to do this, but it's not producing something. And sometimes that's like, I need to manage this non-production, non-real estate sales part of the business, but because I'm not really innovating or building or creating newness into the business, new life, new fresh air, because I'm not like critically reviewing and evaluating what's already there, then it's less healthy, it's less alive, and we lose it. And so signs of that are that like lots of hard work and no results. Now, this is nuance because it's business, and small business is hard. But there are other times where you're like, I'm putting in the work and the results aren't there yet, but I'm seeing signs of progress. That's different than this, where you're like, I just keep doing lots of work and I don't see signs of even progress. So like sometimes results do take a lot of time, and it's worth the compounding, long, consistent work. But there are other times where you're like, I'm just sort of showing up and going through the motions, and it feels like a tremendous amount of work, and there aren't even signs of progress. That's an indicator that, hey, something's got to change. You need to change your mindset, your activity. You need to get a different viewpoint. You need to think about different lead sources or whatever, because that, if that's sustained over time, is sucking the life and oxygen out of your business. So if you find that there's just a lot of work and you're not seeing much progress or any real signs of value, or the next link in the chain is being added, that's a red flag. We're in trouble. We are in trouble. Okay. The other idea is when there's more work, right? And not work in a bad way, right? But like, hey, there's more ideas. There's more action. Maybe even more revenue, but there's no more of the good stuff, meaning profit, life transformation, super happy clients, right? It's just, hey, it's just more for the sake of more. But it's sucking the oxygen out of the room still, right? So that sounds really counterintuitive to like, well, more is growth and growth is good and more is good. And well, not all the time. That's how sometimes you can be like, man, I kind of saw this happening, but I kept telling myself it was something else. I kept telling myself more was good. I kept telling myself, well, we're busy. That's got to be good. And then all of a sudden it wasn't even a business worth having anymore. So more ideas, more action, but not necessarily more impact or income. Right. So that's literally what we talk about here all the time, right? That's the grind and the overwhelm and not the freedom and the income and the impact. So that's another sign though, right? You're like, hey, we're pouring more and more and more into it, but we're not getting the right things out of it. And again, if you're not paying close enough attention, that's one that you might not see for a little while. You're like, oh, GCI is way up. Well, what's happening with profit? Transactions are way up. Great. Are your agents successful? Are they happy? Are they thriving? Are they making the right amount of money? Is there a reasonably healthy balance there? Or are they suffocating? And then I mentioned earlier some other indicators, and I'll say them again, maybe with a little more detail, but things like where the business suffers a loss and doesn't do anything about it. So for example, let's just say you're a small team and you have 3 agents and you lose an agent. Well, you just lost 33% of your sales force. And if you don't do anything, even if you maintain your sales volume, those other 2 people just took on significant increases in workload or effort. And again, you might think, well, they just got more business. More business is always good. Well, not always. Some people have found a healthy capacity, or in a certain season, they really can't handle more capacity well, and they had to, and now they're not doing anything well, and that will suck the life out of a business. That'll suck the air out of the room and suffocate a team member or a team altogether. And there's a bunch of other examples of that. I use the team agent example, but staff, you lose staff and you don't do anything about it, and just the burden spreads out, and all of a sudden it sucks the air out of the room. You lose a good piece of technology, or you need to cut some costs, but you don't do something to counter that, and it just feels like this bleed, this exhaustion, this lack of air in the room. Again, so we're trying to stick with this, suffocation metaphor here.
And this is, not to steal your quote, but this is probably another episode, but it makes me want to lean into then what's the difference, or when do you choose to patch versus when to repair? Yeah.
So a great question, actually. And that would be another episode. There's not a lot of times that the best choice is just to patch. Now, I will say, look, just off the top of my head, trying to think of a scenario for that, man, if we're in a string of record-breaking months, we're not changing technology.
Right.
You're like, oh, we got a weird technology goof. You're like, just baling wire. Just keep it going until a slower pace of time, or we can hire someone or outside person to go fix that. But we don't really have the bandwidth right now, and it's not worth allocating our time, attention, and focus over there right now to get that done. Now, as a leader, as an owner of what I would call sort of a real team that has enough leverage to keep your eyes on the horizon, there's someone whose job it is to see that even in a rapid production season, then they can go hire someone to do that even in the hustle. But there's no such thing as a perfect organization. And I'm not saying real team meaning that yours is fake or that mine is perfect or any of those things. But even with the right staff, the right budget and all that, there are seasons where you're like, hey, for now, done is better than perfect. Good enough is good enough. But it's rare that that's going to continue to be true for years. Certainly rare that it might even continue to be true for quarters. But that's a scenario where I could see that be the case. But almost all the time, the right move is to go, okay, hold on, what's the real problem? Because another thing you can do in a business that's risking this kind of suffocation is you fix the wrong problem, or you fix the symptom but not the root problem. And those are also things that will choke your business out. You're like, hey, that's all I do is I come to the office every day and I problem solve. But you're fixing these little downstream effects and you're not fixing the upstream cause. And everyone is not really getting you much progress, and they're wearing you out. And again, that's that exhaustion. So again, this is semantics when we say, suffocation versus burnout. But the point I'm trying to make, regardless of how you want to label it, is you need to be careful. Sometimes the overnight blow up maybe you couldn't see that coming. But a lot of times that is a sign of a sustained failure of leadership or a sustained failure of an appropriate value exchange. What I'm talking about, though, is sort of that just slow bleed of not giving the business what it needs. And it's not because you necessarily don't want to. There are certainly people out there like, I just don't want to do the work. I'm going to ride this thing as long as I can. That's just obviously a failure of leadership. There are people that are trying, right? But they're failing to see it wisely. They're failing to prioritize well. And that's more often than not the reason that a good real estate business or team suffocates and dies. It's not because they just didn't care or they didn't put in the work. It's because they couldn't see clearly, or they were working on the wrong things, or they were just so darn exhausted that they couldn't get to it, and they couldn't get to enough of the critical things in time. Now, it is usually pretty fixable, right? They're other than just like we don't have the business, we don't have clients, and we're not doing the right things to get them. A lot of these other things this is avoidable, is what I'm trying to say. The suffocation of the business is avoidable. And by all means, the just like massive blow up of the business, the sudden burnout is avoidable. Now, for those of you that are like, man, I think I'm in good shape, but I'm afraid of those things. I don't want to burn out. I don't want to suffocate. I don't want to blow up. I don't want my people walking out. I don't want to be oblivious. What do I do? First of all, I'm happy to jump on a call with you, a Zoom call or a phone call for 15 or 20 minutes. You can still get direct access to my calendar right now. I don't know how much longer we're going to do that, but you can grab 15 or 20 minutes of my time and we'll just talk about what's going on with you, what could be good next steps. No charge, no commitment, no nothing. Just click a link below this video or near this audio, wherever you're getting the podcast. And I'll be happy to chat with you for a while as long as I have availability to do that. If at that time you want to inquire about coaching, then obviously there's a longer term relationship with some more details that can help you build to avoid these types of outcomes. But you can grab a free 15 or 20 minutes with me right now. Just click the link near this video or the audio. You can share it with another real estate agent, broker, team leader, friend that you think that would help or that would benefit from a conversation like this as well. So go ahead and do that. But other things you can do is when you build your business plan, we do a business planning event every year. You can jump on that or whatever you do to come up with a plan that you feel really confident in. Stick to it. I mean, I know how simple that sounds, but stick to it. Pay attention to it. Measure against it. Are we on plan? Are we off plan? Are we implementing the plan, or have we kind of freestyled and we're nowhere near that anymore? But just your ability with sober eyes to evaluate your own business. And if you, like most of us, can't do that, it's very difficult to evaluate your own situation really, really, really well. That's the value of coaching or a board of advisors or a somewhat disinterested third party. And the reason I say somewhat is hopefully they're interested in your success, but they're not biased. They're not caught up in your business. So as a third party, they can go, hey, this doesn't look right to me. Hey, I've heard your people talking. This doesn't sound healthy. That perspective is really valuable. Obviously, a coach is a great way to get it. A board of advisors, if you can have such a thing in the scale of business you've got. If you have a business partner, historically that's tends to be a little bit more negative thing than a positive thing. But if you've got a healthy partnership relationship and one is more actively engaged and one isn't, that other one can sometimes offer that perspective. But those are some things you can do to avoid this. So if you were reverse engineering this episode and you go, man, how do I avoid burnout? You look out for the things we discussed here. You are evaluating the health of the business, the amount of oxygen in the room, the amount of blood pumping through this thing all the time. Daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. You use my cadence of self-leadership as an additional cadence of business leadership, which is to devote daily, withdraw weekly, migrate monthly, and abandon annually. Are you looking at the business in short glimpses every day? Are you taking a little bit deeper dive weekly? Every month, are you getting a good look back and a good look forward? Quarterly, are you doing that as an evaluation of the plan? And then annually, are you really, 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 really digging in, looking back a little, looking forward a lot, and then again, going through that cadence throughout the following year to stay true to it. So it will work. You can avoid the burnout, the blow up, and the suffocation of a really great business. Let us know if we can help you with that. Click the link below this video or near this audio. We'll jump on the phone or Zoom for 15 or 20 minutes, and I'd be honored to help you build a business that avoids burnout and suffocation and that really thrives in the freedom and the income and the impact of a great residential real estate business. I'll see you on the next one.